No one knows everything, but everyone knows something no one else knows, including you. Welcome to the other side of things. I'm your host, Dr. Michael DiMaria, and for 35 years, I've been a guide of the soul. On the other side of things, we explore alternative perspectives on challenging topics, ranging from love, sex, death, and madness to dream work, breath work, and other cutting edge healing modalities. We live on a precipice as a species. So let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Things, where we explore the sometimes taboo, sometimes the different, look at things from a different perspective, sometimes love, death, madness, but in particular, alternative and holistic healing methods that go beyond your normal everyday. And I'm really excited to have our guest on today. We've been talking about it for probably close to a year, and she also has been a wonderful addition to my own health and healing as somebody who's been my mindfulness based, trauma informed personal trainer when I came out of COVID. And I'm always grateful for Gabby's help and support. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce her and welcome her on and share a little bit about how we met. So, Gabi Varga is a trauma informed personal trainer. She's been a fitness coach for 20 years. She started her journey as a group fitness instructor in her home country of Hungary. She continued that path in Montreal. Later, she became a personal trainer after moving to her current city, Vancouver, where I was actually able to have a personal
Yes.
in Vancouver session with her, about a year and a half ago, which was
Mhm.
awesome. Her own experience with being in emotionally abusive relationships and obsessive exercise put her on the trauma informed path and decided for her to pivot her angle and help people who need a more gentle approach to movement. Her love for somatics led her to discover a fitness approach that builds both emotional and physical resilience. She helps people become better connected to their bodies, and they recognize that as a safe space with autonomy and a supportive environment that may be missing peace for them currently. So, Gabby, welcome to the other side of things.
Hi, Michael. So happy to be here. Thank you for
Uh,
having me.
yes. Well, it was such a huge breakthrough for me. And just to give our listeners a little background, I've been an athlete all my life. You know this as you have been, and in particular, played all kinds of sports growing up and in high school, and football, lacrosse, hockey, soccer. I was on track. I loved being physical. I loved being in my body, dancer, etc. And two things, happened to so many of us during COVID. I fell out of my typical usual workout routine. And when we were coming out of COVID was when, I came across I think it was on Instagram
Yes.
because it was,
Yeah.
I was scrolling through. And what happened was, and I know this is something that's many people out there can relate to, and you certainly can relate to, because I kind of felt out of shape and I felt like I had been behind the eight ball with COVID. I went at it too fast, too quick, too much, right? And
Hmm.
ended up hurting myself or having setbacks. And it was like, it was so frustrating. It was just really so frustrating. And and then I beat myself up for the setback. And so I'm scrolling through, and here as a psychologist over 30 years where I practiced trauma informed therapy, I never heard of a trauma informed personal trainer. And I when I immediately saw it, and of course your warm inviting smile, and I just immediately said, wow, what is this? And so I followed you for a while, and then finally I said, I need to reach out to her, and reached out to you. It was probably been a couple years ago. And it was such a huge shift. And boy, when we were working together, I had no idea how harsh, cruel, and drill sergeant I had internalized in my head that was really toxic.
Mm.
and you were so kind and gentle and supportive in helping me replace that with a kinder, gentler, more trauma informed, relationship to myself, my own exercise, and my own personal training. So thank you for that. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people out there may not even know what trauma informed means, or in particular trauma informed personal training. So I was wondering, if you can explain a little bit about what is a trauma informed personal trainer and what led you to pursue this approach yourself.
Absolutely. And thank you for the introduction. Thank you for talking about our how we met because
Mm,
it's part of the story. And I love talking about it because I have a very like soft spot for you because we met in person
mm.
in Vancouver and that was such a wonderful day together.
Yes, it was.
I was my cup was full.
Mm, thank you. It was very
That
special. It was beautiful.
it was special. So trauma informed personal training is a holistic approach to fitness that I use movement as a healing modality, and it comes from so it prioritizes emotional safety, body awareness, and autonomy. It's rooted in the understanding that trauma leaves an imprint on the body, and it alters the perception how how people approach fitness, and how the nervous system get changes by trauma. So it focuses on supporting clients in a very different, in a more gentle way. However, this is my interpretation of trauma informed personal training because there's a lot of people are there who have been doing it, so everyone has their own little twist to it, to what trauma informed means to them. But through my own experience with overtraining and the emotional abuse that I mentioned earlier, you mentioned earlier, sorry, that the overexertion and avoidance uh, tend to become this yo-yo effect that we go between the two, and that's what we move away from. So I help my clients to create a program that's sustainable. We find a pace that feels uh, that they can enjoy. So we focus on I focus on helping my clients to be seen, supported, and empowered, because I look at movement as part of the healing journey rather than, you know, make it or break it type of thing.
Beautiful, beautiful. So yeah, from what you say, it's as if trauma, how it shows up in the body. You mentioned an imprint. Um, how does your work address that? Like, what are some of the things? I mean, um, I know, and this kind of goes into with this mindfulness piece, but what was new for me in our work, and it's so funny because here I teach meditation and yoga and everything, but when I go into the gym, when I was working on particularly, resistance training, it
Mhm.
was, I was Mr. Macho, right? Or I was Mr. I call him Mike. Mike is my teenage athlete persona. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
I'm going to go in there and Mike's going to, and
Alter
I,
ego.
right, my alter ego. But you'd have us drop in almost like a yoga class.
Hmm.
You'd have us drop in, and that it was just wasn't part of my, it was like they were split in my brain,
Hmm.
and which is really was a such a wake up call to me. So ways that you address that and use mindfulness, or present moment awareness, I might say,
I like that word.
yeah. So yeah, when you like typically, or maybe even suggestions to the listeners out there, what are some tips about how you can address that and notice if you need trauma informed training?
Well, if what I mentioned earlier, if you tend to go between overtraining and not training at all, that's a very good indicator that you've gone through something very traumatic in the past. So, and a lot of people go into this mentality because that's the world we live in right
Yeah.
now, that we don't feel enough. So, not enoughness
Mm,
can lead us to doing too much too soon. So that can be an indicator. Um, Anything, honestly, in my opinion, everyone needs trauma-informed personal
yeah.
training, but people who have gone through abuse, emotional, physical abuse, um, they've had a harder upbringing where they weren't in a loving home. They if people know what being in survival mode means, that's when the trauma response doesn't get completed in the body, that it gets trapped in it. That's why I say it leaves an imprint, trauma leaves an imprint on the body. So technically, anyone who knows or recognizes that they've had some harder, more challenging times on a mental level, and or they notice that they have body mechanical alterations, and that sounds very, very like big words, but technically if they recognize that they have tension in the body, they don't have the posture anymore that they used to, so they change their postures have changed, tension, movement limitations, they can't do what they used to be able to do, go find a trauma-informed personal trainer,
Great.
because they will address it in a lot more gentle way, and and it becomes very therapeutic.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful. What are some misconceptions people might have about
Mm.
trauma informed training?
I love that question. We have to talk about that a lot more often. That people, when they say trauma informed, the personal trainer piece kind of gets lost, and and people think that I'm a therapist, that
Mhm.
I'm not. um, People think um, that I help them on a mental, emotional level. I do part of that, but I'm more like a soundboard rather than, I'm not here. I cannot give advice in that realm. So I like to say I'm a personal trainer first and foremost, who trains people in a trauma-informed way. So that's the biggest
Beautiful.
misconception, that people, or they think I'm a physiotherapist, and the PT stands for personal trainer, and then some people get confused that, oh, so you're a physical or physiotherapist. I'm like, I made a mistake when I chose my name, but you know what? It gives me an opportunity to educate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, one misconception I think I had, those are excellent, and that's really important to clarify. Thank you. I know one of the misconceptions I had was, oh, I'm not going to be working out enough. Like it's going to be
Ah,
trauma informed. It's going to be, she's going to baby me, and I'm going to be two. I won't get anything. Like it will be, and this is my Mike persona, right?
yeah, yeah, for sure.
The warrior person, who was not moving forward because I was either all or nothing.
Mhm.
And, and, but it was, I think not at all. In fact, a lot of the things we did, which were, when I say gentle, that may not be the right word. Uh, Subtler. I think subtler is a better word. Subtle, that, but when you're having to hold postures and do planks, and you really focused a lot on alignment, and that when you get it right, and then having that, they were, I'd always be exhausted after our workouts,
Mhm.
is what I want to say.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
like,
well put.
yeah, that one misconception for me was like I wasn't going to get a good workout,
Yeah,
so I just want to put that out there too.
yeah, I love that, and thank
Yeah,
you for saying that,
yeah.
because I'm a gentle person. I don't like to be harsh or tough, because I find when the the alignment happens in the body, and just through my own physical experience, because I messed up my body enough that it was so out of alignment. Once I started feel the alignment, everything starts to work so much better. It's
Mm.
insane that, really quality over quantity.
Yes,
Is
that's
if we do the nitty gritty, the gentle stuff, the things that the micro shifts, as we call it in somatics, it it really hits home. But we have to be, that's where the patient's piece comes in, that we cannot rush this. We have to make sure that the nervous system is nurtured. And and I like to say this to people, that my job isn't to push people, my job is to hold them back,
mm,
because of the not enoughness. People always most of the times thrive for doing more rather than less. And we had many conversations about these, that about this topic, that okay, how can we do less and be okay with it? Because
yes.
that's a lot harder than doing more.
Yeah,
I find.
100%. 100%. Less is more. And you know this, there are two things. This in my work with you kind of got me also into, I've shared with you, I'm doing this core balance thing and the ATG thing with the knee over toes. But each one of those, I don't know if I would have stuck with them because they were very slow, very progressive, scalable. The idea of
Mhm.
starting and slowly scaling and not going past where you're not staying in perfect form.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have had the patience to move into those self-guided
Mhm.
programs without kind of rewiring my brain
Mhm.
to yeah, less is more, and how important, I think, and particularly as we age, alignment starts becoming everything,
Absolutely.
and I was doing my work with you at the same time I was doing rolfing, and I was
Yes.
also doing some fascia work, and they all of it was about alignment.
Mhm.
And I can't say enough about that. And I just think of it metaphorically, even with everything else, spiritually, physically, sleep, nutrition, all of that. So, w- you know, I know I know what my sense of the atmosphere of energy that you created, but what is the atmosphere energy you aim to create during a session to help your clients feel both safe and empowered?
Mhm. Mhm. I like to I'll tell you a bit about my past, and then that's going to make a lot more sense how I arrived to where I'm doing now. And then I'm going to circle back to your question, that I'm coming from I used to work as a fitness instructor, so I was yelling, like being in a gym full of people. And then I worked in a gym where we had to be loud every time someone came through the door, like, hi XYZ, hi Michael. We had to yell. and
Right.
and that was my persona that I took on, because I felt I had to be loud, to be seen, to be heard, not with my presence itself. And so everything that uh, until to that point was about nervous system dysregulation, just
Mm,
ah, like discombobulation, right? And I didn't know how to center myself. And when somatics came into play as a client, that's when everything started to shift. And I realized that I don't have to create that anxious excitement, I talk all the time type of, well, I still talk a lot, but I don't have to create that environment when I'm with clients, because actually defeats the purpose. So as a trauma-informed personal trainer, I started to create a lot more relaxed, a lot calmer environment, and where the and what we call, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, is co-regulation. That I make sure I'm grounded, I'm present with my clients. I read their body languages, and when I'm regulated, they can regulate as well. So that's a big part of my work. And of course, there's a lot of giggles. Like I love the giggles because that releases endorphin. It releases the tension that we build. So what I try to focus on, that all emotions are welcome. Like if the client starts to cry, and it happens quite often, that, and I hold safe space for them. I don't try to push it aside. And of course, it's a lot easier when we are talking about online clients, because they are in their own homes. It's just the two of us, no one's around, maybe some dogs or cats, but it's a very safe environment for them. In the gym, it's very, very different. But I've experienced quite some very special moments when clients felt safe to let the tears go, and just be themselves, and allow them to have the time and space um, to sit with the emotions. And again, we can have the funny moments, we can have all the emotions. So I'll let them experience the whole range of emotions,
Mm,
which a lot of us didn't get to do as kids. And and i that's very, very important for me, because I know what I've gone through. And if the client feels anger, go for it.
yeah,
I know it's not about me, it's a lot deeper than that.
yeah.
So it's important. That's how I create the space that I create. And it means a lot to me. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, I always felt that. And two things. Number one, you mentioned about, you know, doing so much online. And we, that outside of that one session we had in person in Vancouver, the rest of our sessions were online. And it was the first time I ever worked with a personal trainer online. And I was really amazed at how uh, not only easy it was, but like you said, safe kind of, because I'm in my own
Mhm.
space and it's quiet and it's just very one-on-one, and outside of every so often some technical issues, it was really a really positive experience. And what percentage of your practice now is online?
I would say right now, I don't know my numbers, but probably 40 is online, 60 in person, or
Okay.
maybe even 30 online, 70 in person. I
Okay.
definitely want to shift that,
Yeah.
because I would never go online 100%, because I need the physical touch. I need that extra,
Yeah.
to be with people in person. And I'm really lucky where I go, what gym I go to, because I know everyone. But technically about 30-40% right now.
Great.
So
Great.
anyone out there who would like to help with the numbers, come find me.
Great. And we will have all that in the description too. Um, you mentioned also very important terms, regulated and dysregulated.
Mhm.
And I was just, for the listeners that may not be aware of that, although it's becoming so common in our
Yeah.
culture, but for those who aren't in the know, can you say a little bit about what's the difference between being regulated, your nervous system being regulated versus dysregulated?
Mhm. I might be, and you can help me out here,
Sure.
because you have a lot better vocabulary than I do, as English is not my first language.
Sure.
But technically, a regulated nervous system regulation means that you're present in your body. It doesn't mean you're calm all the time, but you have a baseline what you can go back to, that how you have tools, um, how to come back to your how to come back to being present, like breathing exercises, meditation, or orienting. What we did in what we always do during, at the beginning of each session, is dropping in. So we do a body scan. So technically, you're present and you're aware of your surroundings and your bodily sensations, bodily functions. And when you're dysregulated, it happens when when trauma happens in the body and the trauma cycle doesn't complete itself. So dysregulation means you're ruminating. It can mean ruminating thoughts. You're not present in your body. That's when it comes to fitness, that's when injuries happen a lot of times, because people are just going through the motions. They just want to get done with the task, but they are not intentional. They are not putting thoughts into, okay, where am I feeling, what am I feeling. It's they're completely somewhere else. Let's say someone comes through the gym's door, and they had a bad day at work, and they cannot put that down. They are still in that mindset. Okay, what happened? So I cannot let them just go with it. We have to ground. We have to become present. That's when co-regulation happens, and help them. So I don't make the situation worse. I help them to be present. But I find it's the clients I work with, they already know what their baselines are. So dysregulation is when the trauma response is still happening in the body, flight, fight, freeze, fawn, and it really shows during the session that they are not present. They are busy with ruminating thoughts, busy with life in general, and they think that the session will help them get through, but that can be that injuries can happen in that situation.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, no, I think that was an excellent description. Wonderful. Yeah, just that you're not present. And you said another thing that, and just the only addition I would make is kind of reiterating something you said earlier. It's being congruent with your thoughts, feelings, and actions in the
Mhm.
present moment. So, like, instead of being lost, ruminating about this situation that happened in the past, whether it's this morning, yesterday, or 20 years ago,
Mhm.
that you might be angry about something, or you may have tears, that actually expressing the anger, having the tears present moment in this moment is
Yeah.
actually regulating. So when you were
Yes.
saying like creating a space where they can, it doesn't mean being kind of totally zen. It means
Yeah.
being present with, it might, and that helps. But sometimes, like a lot of times when I teach meditation, particularly yoga nidra, I would have people and I would just see the tears rolling down their eyes,
Mhm.
as they got deeper into the meditation. And afterwards, a few people would come up and say, I must be doing it wrong. I cried through the whole meditation. I said, no, that's what you've been avoiding by
Yeah.
staying busy or
Mhm.
staying, focusing on the future or the past. But now you're relaxed enough so your body can regulate itself. So that's the only addition I'd say, is that sometimes regulating means crying, or it
Yeah.
means expressing anger or hurt or sadness or fear.
Yeah.
So that maybe that's a good
Can
segue.
I say
Yeah,
something to that?
please. Sure.
That when we are finally in that um, at that spot, we can process all
Right.
those emotions.
Right.
Process.
Beautiful.
That's
Beautiful.
and we had a very interesting thing when you went skiing. If you
Oh,
if
that's
you feel
right.
like talking
Oh
about that, that
yeah.
was a
No.
very, very, I think that was a very fruitful conversation. It was
Yes. Yes.
beautiful golden nuggets there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm an open book. I mean, so last year skiing was, I was just, it was, maybe it was 2 years ago. I think it was maybe been on my personal trip that I had, yeah, that I was skiing better than I'd skied. I had a great
Mhm.
uh, ski trip, and I was also doing some work and writing, recording, and doing some film stuff. But between the Rolfing, our work, and the fascia work, I mean, I was skiing better than I'd skied in years, feeling so good. The last day of the trip, I decided I'd never cross country skied before.
Yeah.
And so there was this, and so I went for my cross country skiing lesson, and she was taking a history, and I was saying, yeah, I've been, alpine skiing since I was 7, and I had a great week, and I'm doing super, and I, look in shape and all that. And she goes, well, you should try these, we should go right into doing the skating versus this other. And she basically, instead of kind of staying like beginner's mind, I kind of let her, and then I wasn't doing that well, and I was frustrated. And but she was like my football coach. It was kind of, you can do this, you can do that, and you come on now, do this and
Yeah.
do that. And she was pushing me, and I was getting more and more dysregulated. But instead of stopping, I think I told you this 2 or 3 times, I told her, I'm really not comfortable. Can we go
Yeah.
back and try the other skis? And she was like, oh, you can do this. You can do this. You got this. And I ended up here. I had been skiing, blacks and challenging expert alpine slopes all week and doing great. And here I'm on flat ground cross country skiing, and I fall and actually really hurt my wrist that took a few months to heal. And not only did I hurt my wrist, but then I was like so dysregulated, I ended up getting sick too. I got like a
Yeah.
cold or something. And actually I have not been sick since, but because and I was so, and I shared with you, and I was pretty upset when I shared the whole story with you. And it was not, I wasn't present.
Yeah.
I wasn't present. And I really let somebody who was pushy and not, she was totally unempathic. She was totally not tuning into me. She was totally unaware of where I was. And she's like skating circles around. And it's just like, it was very, yeah, it was disheartening. It was traumatizing,
Yeah.
actually. The whole situation was traumatizing. And I think that's where, and I've had other personal, I mean, this was, cross country ski lesson, but one of the reasons I was drawn to too, I had 2 or 3 experiences with uh, personal trainers that were, you know, uh, abusive is too hard of a word, but just they weren't trauma informed. They were the old school,
Yeah.
pushy, um, not tuning into where I was, and having had a lot of trauma as a kid, that, and that I overcame it by the tough guy attitude, which only made it worse.
Yeah.
It's, I always liken it to, in the football player, instead of dealing with the injury, they give him a cortisone shot and he goes in, and now he's not even aware he's really screwing up his
Yes.
knee, or his hip or whatever, or his back. And how avoiding and not, again, is the less is more.
Yeah.
And it soured the rest of my trip. So yeah, no, I'm always willing to be a golden nugget of learning and learn from my mistakes too. But
Yeah.
I don't know if there was anything you wanted to share in particular from that. But yeah, that was
Oh,
the ugly story,
absolutely.
the ugly story, Michael's ugly end of his skiing. This year went back skiing, same place, and had a fantastic trip. And
Woohoo!
yeah, right. So, but that was my 2023 experience.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was last year. And that's when autonomy comes into
Mm,
play huge. That these people only know what they know, right?
right.
It can be an ego thing that they see that, oh, you're a good skier, but they have to see the situation for what it really is. And instead of uh, thinking, okay, making the assumption that, well, he's good at downhill skiing, then he's going to be good at cross country skiing. But we have to, I always like to teach my clients and that be feel free to say no to me anytime. And a lot of times that and we did that too together,
Mm-hmm.
that when I saw your body language said no, even though you proceeded, then I stop and I say, okay, this is what I'm seeing, what's happening in the body. And and you told me once that when you had that yoga teacher experience, that so we pull the pieces apart just to make sure what's happening. And it's important to recognize if the client is not comfortable, because the people pleaser, that's a trauma response. The fawn response, the people pleaser comes out of us, and we want to please the other person even though we are the one who paid big bucks for the
Right.
session, right?
Right.
And
Right.
we want the trainer to be proud of us. So kind of the role of being a child and our parents, so we want to make our parents be proud, so it's almost the same thing. But we have to I want all of you to feel empowered by saying no. And I would never take that away from my clients. I may push you a little bit to see if your window of tolerance is ready for being pushed a little bit. But if the client's body language says hell no, then it's an automatic no. And I want you to feel comfortable and proud of saying no. I would never belittle someone for saying no. And that's something that I learned through my somatic work.
Yeah.
And it's so empowering, because if you say no to me, that can relate to all areas of your life.
Yeah.
And if that means that you're not going to get injured, if that means you can stand up for yourself in a situation when someone is trying to put you down, you never know when these skills, these tools can come handy. So
Yeah. No, beautiful. And it does remind me, yeah, that sense of, yeah, saying no to you, saying yes to yourself. And
mhm.
that was like you did, that was a huge thing whenever I get into that one particular pigeon pose, or
Yeah,
that
yeah,
with my knee, that with the yoga instructor who pushed my knee past where I
yeah,
told her, I even said no, and it tore my meniscus in my right
yeah,
knee. And I have major trauma around that.
yeah.
And that was, required surgery. And
Mm,
that was a long, huge uh, um, challenge. And you noticed it. It was funny because here, even though we talked and explored that, it was like you still had to bring it to my consciousness, saying, I'm getting your body language is a no on this. You can say no.
yeah.
And we completely adjusted it, and that was hugely healing and helpful. And for those who don't know, yeah, that because most people are taught in school the trauma response, fight, flight, flee, or freeze, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that mine was always the fourth, is the fawning.
The fun. Yeah.
Yeah, the fawn, which is
Were
the
you taught
obsessive.
at all, or back then that wasn't part
It
of the
wasn't, yeah,
curriculum?
no,
Yeah.
40 years ago, it was fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And it really, I think maybe the last 20 years, like,
Mm-hmm.
it just ages me when going through school. But fawn was like, codependency came to the fore in the
Yes.
90s. And so it really wasn't added to the academic trauma response really till the last 20 years or so, that you'd start seeing it. That really, when I first said yes, that's exactly it, was for
Mm-hmm.
me, is the obsessive pleasing,
Yeah.
which is just as toxic and unhealthy, in some ways worse, because you can actually be a accomplice and because in our culture you don't really get often opportunities to fight or flight, so we tend to freeze
Yeah.
or fawn. And especially with my personality type, that's always been my trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in an unhealthy, toxic relationship with a teacher, professional, or even just a
Yeah.
relationship, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's, I don't have to tell you that.
Oh,
Right.
and it's interesting because a lot of people, when it comes to the fun response, the people pleaser, when two people pleasers come together, we don't even recognize our patterns because we just want to make it work.
Right.
and and it's very easy. We don't try to overpower the other person, but when it comes to a toxic relationship or unhealthy dynamics, you're a people pleaser, and the other person sees that, oh, I can push this person down, I can feel that I can become the superior in the dynamics. And a lot of us grew up with those dynamics, so we think that's the norm.
Right.
when
Absolutely.
when we cave in, and the caregiver, whoever, then overpowers us, and then we have to cave. But when, for me, it just happened, the last couple of years, that no, when healthy people or people pleasers come together, we actually make it work, and we don't try to overpower each
Yeah.
other. So it's a very important piece. I
Yeah.
feel that it doesn't mean we shouldn't heal it, but
Sure. It
but
is
it's
less.
definitely different
Yes.
dynamics in
Totally.
different
Yeah.
relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well said. So, I was just thinking, I was asking for an example, but we actually used my story as an example. So that's great. How about other personal trainers out there who might
Mhm.
want to incorporate trauma sensitivity into their practice? What recommendations would you give them?
Empathy,
Oh, great.
empathy, compassion. Try to put yourself into their shoes, into the client's shoes, because I'm coming from the same place, that all I knew was I love the gym, I enjoy this environment, and I couldn't even fathom that someone is scared or someone fears the gym. But we have to take a step back, more like 100, and then realize that not everyone has the same experience as we do. So empathy is huge. And maybe not, let's say, just hypothetically, a client comes through the door and they want weight loss, and the trainer keeps that goal in mind, and they will do anything to make that happen. But I find a lot of times, when we go through the motions, we start to get to know each other, shit starts to bubble to the surface.
Yes.
And that's when we have to be very compassionate and see what's happening to the client. Let's say if they fear an exercise, read that body language, make sure we address that, rather than pretending or accepting that, well, that's the way it is. No, we don't have to accept that. And what I suggest to trainers, that um, I'd focus on getting the client feel comfortable,
Mhm.
and make them feel confident, and highlight what they are good at, rather than keep correcting them with everything. Because what we are coming from, a lot of us, that, oh, we have to get better, we have to be good at it, but we are not told enough what we are already doing well.
Mm, beautiful. Yeah, no, that's something as a therapist when I did couples work, I said, I would say for every criticism you give your partner, you have to come up with four praises.
Well put.
And
I
right.
love that.
And because negative reinforcement is a very poor modifier of behavior that,
Yeah.
telling somebody what they're not doing it doesn't modify behavior that much, very, very little on a learning curve. It goes, very slow slope,
Mhm.
but positive reinforcing desirable behavior is like
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 times as effective if you look at
Yeah.
the learning curve. So that's exactly, so wonderfully put. Really focusing on the positive and tuning in empathy and what are they doing well. I love
Mhm.
that. So looking at, I think this is kind of a two-part question. Number one, how has practicing trauma informed personal training changed you? And also, what do you see as your vision for the future for this work, both you
Mhm.
individually and for the field of personal
Mhm.
training?
I'll answer to the first one, and I may ask you to ask the second part,
Sure.
because that's where my trauma comes from, that I can't retain a lot of information.
Mm.
call
No
everyone
worries. No worries. I can restate it.
that.
Absolutely.
So, see, it already happened. So, what was the first part of the question?
First part was, how has practicing as a trauma informed personal trainer changed you?
Yeah. So, coming from a very simple family, middle class, hardworking family in Hungary, all I've known was working hard, but I didn't know how to work smart, and that was a big part for me. I went through overtraining, overworking, burning out, not enjoying what I was doing because there was no mindfulness to it. I was going through the motions. I couldn't be in the happiness. I was just chasing what was in front of me rather than feeling all the feels. You know
Hmm.
what I would do anything to go back to the old days and just teach one class and feel the energy,
Right. Sure.
but I didn't have the capacity to take that on. All the love that all my participants were giving me. So what changed after seeing this plateau many, many times playing out in my life? Somatics and trauma informed approach really helped me to gain that capacity for emotions that I had to suppress for a very long time. And I learned that it's okay to feel anger, to feel sadness, because if I'm able to feel those emotions, I'll be able to feel happiness and all the really, really yummy emotions. So
Hmm.
that's what changed the last couple of years through my own inner journey. What personal growth, I did not know what that was growing
Hmm.
up. That was unheard of because everyone was in the grind. And
Yes.
I don't want to be in the grind anymore. I wanna I'm creating the life that I really enjoy. So that's and connecting with people who I love connecting with, and we are co-regulating. So that's what's changed. It's a huge game changer for me. Yeah.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And what do you see as the future, both for yourself and even in the world of trauma informed personal training? If you see it as a trend, as this
Hmm.
more people are being aware of this and coming on board.
Hmm. I'll start with a story that a couple of years ago I was in Greece and I met this Canadian family, and I'm I wasn't good with my words then, how to express what trauma informed personal training meant. And the wife said, "Oh, it's because they were from the East Coast. I was from the West Coast." And she said, "Oh, it's a West Coast trend, West Coast thing." And I was so deeply hurt, so,
Mm,
so hurt,
mm,
because I know that I couldn't fight back because I go into freeze. So but it really, now I know that it's not a trend. I know that it's so much deeper. It's I see that personal trainers will be trauma informed at some point.
mm.
Majority of the people,
Beautiful.
I see that, because we need more empathy. We see that trauma informed approach is widely accepted and widely accepted now. So why not to bring that into the fitness space as
Yeah.
well? Yeah,
Beautiful. Well,
important.
well, certainly has been happening in therapy, counseling, and
Yeah.
yoga. You know, that you find that more and more trauma informed
Hmm.
therapy, trauma informed psychologists, trauma informed yoga. So I was thrilled, but I had never seen it with personal training, which is, to me, for me, particularly to me, was particularly a blind spot of mine
Hmm.
that I was unaware of. And it was kind of such a figure ground shift. And, it's been great because now, I really have, and I'll say this only because I would always say as a therapist, I'm here to work myself out of a job. You kind of did such a good job with me. You worked yourself out of a job, because I was able to get back to doing
That's,
my
yeah,
training in a way that was congruent for me. And I feel better shape now than I have in, I don't know, 20 years. And
yeah,
I'm working out smarter
yeah.
and more globally on everything. And I'm able to be more patient with myself and
Mhm.
patient with my training. And I'm alternating my days again. I would always, this isn't entirely true. It's kind of a poor metaphor, but it's what pops up in my mind. It was kind of like I was doing fast food training, you know,
Oh, very good.
right?
Well put.
Yeah, it was like fast food training. And now I spend time just like I cook. I mean, for 20 years, more than 20. I don't think I've eaten fast food for 30 years, but I, with my training, it was kind of like I would call it my hour of power, but I try to do
Yes,
everything in
yeah,
an
yeah.
hour.
You called that. I remember.
But I just was, and I would do the same thing. I would got myself in a box. And now it's
Mhm,
like, I might spend 2, 3 hours one day but I do a lot of varied things, from walking to
mhm,
doing the stairs at the condo to biking, to walking backwards, to doing an upper, and I do alternate my leg day with my upper body now. And
mhm.
it's more holistic, global. It's more, even at the end of the day, if I feel like, yeah, I want to do some dancing, or I want to do some movement, or I want to go
Yeah,
and do a longer walk, or get on the bike, and it's more varied, and it just, now it's integrated into my life in a way it hasn't been ever,
mhm.
actually.
Yeah,
It's, I've never felt like I've been imbalanced with understanding and tuning into what my body needs when. And that means having a rest day sometimes,
yeah.
or taking a rest afternoon, or saying, you know what, this doesn't feel good, I'm going to stop. I'm just,
Awesome.
yeah.
I
So
did my job. I
you
did
did
my
your
job.
job. You did your job. And so grateful for you. For those who would love to connect with you or learn more about your work or work with you, how are some ways people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, for sure. And just one note on me working myself out of my job. That's the biggest compliment, because I want people to have that critical thinking for like for themselves, that okay, is this serving me or not? That I don't want anyone to follow orders.
Yeah.
So I'm overly grateful that I worked myself out of the job,
Yeah.
and it's an investment. It's about, there's so many wonderful tools that we can take away, and that's my job, and I love it. It aligns with me so much. So on that note, people can find me, since I'm 40, I'm more like an Instagrammer type of person. People can find me on Instagram at the Trauma Informed PT, or website. It's going to be updated soon, so if you want to check out the old content, you should go on now before it changes. So it's thetraumainformedpt.com. Yeah, and that's where people can book a consultation. On Instagram too, in the bio, so you get to see my packages, how to work with me, a bit about what I do, my background, my bio. So yeah, so those are the two places people can
Great.
find.
Wonderful. Gabby, thank you so much, both personally for the work we did together. And I was reminded as you were talking of the old adage that give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime.
Yeah.
So thank you for teaching me to fish a bit better when it comes to my personal training. And a thousand thank yous for being on today. We so appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. It was such an honor and huge co-regulation, I gotta say.
Oh, I'm so glad, and likewise. And to our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in once again. And we will see you next time on The Other Side of Things. Thank you for tuning in to The Other Side of Things. I have been your host and guide, Dr. Michael DeMaria. You can find out more about my work at michaeldemaria.com. Explore the books, music, and online programs and films. And we'll see you next time on the other side.